Octopath Traveler is a very traditional and incredibly well-structured JRPG. It hits a lot of the same notes practically any other game in the genre has before. However, the way it structures itself and delivers its experience is what makes otherwise fairly standard progression and storytelling something unique and memorable. I'm Mark, and welcome to another GameCast review. Today I'll be reviewing Octopath Traveler, now available exclusively for the Nintendo Switch. The story in Octopath, or more accurately the stories in Octopath, all start out like a traditional JRPG narrative. You've got a battle-hardened warrior trying to bury his past, a merchant who wants to see all the world has to offer, a dancer who's been screwed over by life and wants vengeance, and an orphan who's trying to complete an ancient rite for the sake of her adopted family. That's not all either, as the other four characters have their own fairly standard introductions too. See, the thing about Octopath is that it isn't one cohesive story of heroes banding together to fight evil and save the world. Instead, it's the story of 8 people, each venturing out into the world for 8 distinct reasons. The narratives themselves don't actually come together. Instead, each character travels with one another for generally unexplained reasons, and sometimes they'll weigh in on the events. It's a risky choice for an RPG, especially as its long runtime is contributed by its shorter stories, and while there is depth and growth and some genuinely interesting stories to find, some of them feel short, messy, or just unengaging. This has a lot to do with how each story is broken up into 4 chapters. Each chapter technically progresses the narrative forward, but I felt that it was more like half of the stories were a character arc broken up into 4 sequences, while others were 4 episodes that took place during the character's grander journey. It's hard to relate to some of these characters because of who they are. For example, the thief Therion isn't a nice person. The game makes this clear from the start, as he'll rob someone blind if given the chance, but it feels like the game wants you to sympathise with him during his arc for a situation he got himself into. That's not to say that his story wasn't bad, but it does mean that Therion is unlikable. That being said, characters like Alphen, who start out starry-eyed and pretty generic, end up with interesting character arcs that shift their worldview. Gameplay in Octopath is its strongest suit. It takes standard JRPG mechanics like turn-based combat and job systems, and then expands them further with a fresher spin. The turn-based combat is more in line with modern JRPGs, with a turn order that can be interrupted or shifted based on your skills and actions. Enemies have a guard meter that can be broken if they are hit enough times with a particular weapon or elemental weakness. This negates their turn for the next round and drops their guard, allowing for a series of punishing assaults. Consecutive rounds will have each party member store BP, an expendable resource that buffs the effects of whatever action you take that turn. This buff can be stacked up to 4 times and can have some pretty devastating results. Each party member starts out with a job that cannot be changed, as it directly relates to who they are as characters. These initial jobs also grant special skills in and out of combat unique to that character. For example, Therion, being a thief, can steal from any NPC you can talk to. Primrose can charm them and use them as a temporary party member in battle. Ulbrich can challenge them to a fight, which can be pretty funny when he challenges random kids or old people to battle. Each of these path actions is required at some point or another to progress, but it's recommended to use them whenever you can. Once you've completed the first chapters and the game is opened up, you can then start dual classing your team. Each party member can change job to any other class other than their own, provided you've found the required shrine. Dual classing changes your appearance and grants you all the skills of that second job in conjunction with your first. So a warrior thief can absorb huge amounts of damage as well as leech back life and SP whenever they feel like it. After battle, you'll also earn job points, which can be spent on learning more skills for your current jobs. Once you reach certain thresholds of experience for each job, you'll then gain access to passive skills related to that job and build more unique characters. My build for the second half of the game focused on my 2 main attackers having both a counter skill and possible extra strike after finishing their turn. Skills like cover and break damage are also important, and it's difficult finding the right balance of skills and jobs. The game can be quite grindy, especially if you favour some characters over others. The second half of the game also gets a little trickier, with bosses that can rotate their weaknesses, or enemies that can inflict heavy status ailments. Building the right team is vital, but it also made some fights drag on needlessly. Once I settled on my main team and one rotating character for what chapter I was on, I never really felt the game fight back all that much. Sure, some bosses could still do a number on me, but they were long fights, not so much hard fights. Presentation in Octopath is another of its strong suits. Much like its approach to gameplay, Octopath aims for something nostalgic while aiming for a more modern market. What this translates to is its HD 2D graphical style, melding simple 3D environments with 2D sprites to create a sense of depth and character. It looks very clean and the strategic use of blurring for distance really stands out. It almost looks like an older Final Fantasy was translated into a pop-up book. My only complaint would be that while environments are fairly varied, there is a very clear path to moving through them, and dungeons all feel identical to one another with only a couple small branching paths for a treasure chest here or there. It's just a bit too simple, but then again, because of this simplicity, I never really lost my bearings after a random encounter. The character sprite work is very reminiscent of older JRPGs, with everyone having the same basic build and face, just a few colours and outfit changes here or there to distinguish them. It's simple and it works, but depending on where you stand on nostalgia, I can see it being a bit of a negative. Enemy and boss encounters are a throwback as well, with small cutscene sprites but elaborate and well-detailed titans in actual combat. It's actually pretty funny seeing someone your height in a cutscene tower over you the second a battle starts. While the game does take itself quite seriously, I felt that its visuals were a running gag, like its simple battle animations and Primrose's supposedly elaborate and exotic dances that play out in the same single standing pose every time. The voice work is quite solid, although the writing for Hanet and her entire village is a little frustrating. I know what they were going for, but they went a little overboard on unnecessary dialogue. Everyone else is great though, which is good news as they also pair very well with the amazing OST. Every track fits the situation perfectly. There are some incredibly epic battle songs, some relaxing village themes, great character interludes, and unsettling suspenseful tracks. They went all out on the soundtrack and I'm glad they did. At the end of the day, Octopath Traveler is a great game. It may not have always been consistent in terms of story, but that's what happens when you try to tell 8 separate narratives of varying urgency. Fortunately, its gameplay was solid the whole way through, and while it may have gotten a bit grindy or repetitive, I always tried to freshen it up by using a new character or swapping jobs and skills. It's a great time sink and works perfectly with the Switch's portable nature. Because of that, I'd say Octopath Traveler is a must-buy for any JRPG fans that already have a Switch. It's not reason enough to go out and buy a Switch, but if you're interested in some of the other exclusives, then Octopath can definitely become part of that reason. I hope you enjoyed that video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and please let us know what you thought of Octopath Traveler in the comments below. Until next time, bye!